Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome to the JT Effect. I'm your host, John F. Thomas, and we are now have expanded upon Fly Nubian King Network. So that's the Fly Nubian King Network, and I'm super, super excited to have my main man back, my special guest, Frank W. Johnson, man. A lot of people were saying you did such a great job the last time I interviewed you that you were the first person that I thought, I was like, I gotta bring him back because, like I said, you're a walking history book to me. It's like, you know so much, and it's like, man, I'd be trying to remember sometimes what I ate yesterday morning,
Well, look, I got a flow full of books right now that I ain't read, and you got part of my bookshelf in the background right here too.
Nice.
So I inherited some of my daddy's books, and I mean, the future is already written. It's past is, and it is fascinating for me to go in and just see the same things happening, the same quotes being repeated. But it is what it is. We as Americans, and notice what I'm going to do is I really want to get rid of these things that we normally isolate for Black people.
Mm-hmm.
Say, well, Black folk, no. This is an American trait. This is Gore Vidal. If you all don't know Gore Vidal, he was one of the premier historians and writers of this century. He's a distant cousin of Al Gore. He was friends with John F. Kennedy and the Kennedy family. He wrote tons of books about the history of this country, the real history of this country. You can go on YouTube and you can listen to his, him speaking in his debates. He was very sarcastic. He was very funny, but he laced everything with truth. And one period he called the United States, he said, we are the United States of amnesia. He said, because we don't remember from hour to hour. And he said, and we keep falling for the same things. Somebody interviewed him in one of his offices. He had a picture of John F. Kennedy on his wall. And the reporter automatically assumed that he had the picture up because of their friendship. She was like, oh, well, I think that's great that you have a picture of John F. Kennedy in your office. That's because of you all's friendship. He said, no. He said, that is my reminder to never fall for personality again. He said, because what JFK gets celebrated for, a lot of things that he gets celebrated for, he actually didn't do. And he said, that's the warning to himself to never again fall for the code of personality. But I mean, if y'all go and listen to his stuff when he used to debate William F. Buckley in the 1960s, it used to get real ugly because, William F. Buckley was very arrogant. And Gore Vidal was arrogant, but he was also well educated. So he would tear William F. Buckley to pieces. But I mean, go check him out. I mean, the information is out there. The history is out there. We just have to filter through the BS, and we get a lot of BS, and that's on purpose too. But I mean, we are the United States of amnesia, and we keep falling for the same thing over and over again.
Wow, that's amazing because that's true. We are the United States of amnesia. And before we go on, just everyone that's tuning in, make sure you subscribe to FlyNubianKing.com right now. Just make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the notification bell and the like button. We need all the likes. So like. Because we need to get this video out. More people need to see this and to hear the teacher and activist, Frank W. Johnson. He just said, we are the United States of amnesia, which is true. I mean, you turn on TV and there's a new thing every day. Whatever Trump did last week, Trump is doing something new in the next 2 days, or Kanye West has said something, or who knows who else? Charles Barkley probably said something this time around. It's always something new, and I think it seems like it's designed like that. Don't you think?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, very much so. During the time of Dr. King in the 60s, I think there were like 50 or 60 media companies. Now there are I think like five companies own all of the news and the networks that we see. And so that was this consolidation of information. And so most of these networks are funded, they get advertising dollars from the very corporations and the very entities that, we really should be against. And so if you're not, even if they invite you on as a commentator or what they call a talking head, and there's a reason why they call them talking heads, because they get on there and they just talk. And they really give you no viable information. And they're not going to allow you to really speak outside of this narrow view. So I can't go on television and really talk about healthcare for all, because who's paying for advertising dollars on these networks? Big pharma, the healthcare industry. And so I can't go on there and give you the truth about Medicare for all or these things that'll be beneficial, because I'm endangering the profit of these companies. And so they're not going to allow, and if you do get on there and say that, 9 times out of 10, you're probably not going to be invited back. And so we have taken all of this leverage and this power, and it has been condensed down to only a few companies and corporations, and they disseminate information. They disseminate this information. Even when you look at the debates, the way they frame a question, I think they asked Bernie about Medicare for all. The first thing out the gate was, well, how are you going to pay for it? Because the first thing they want to say is, they want to holler about the debt and all this other kind of stuff. What most people don't know is if we do switch to this Medicare for all plan, that premium that they're taking out of your check is going to go away. And it's going to be replaced with another amount that is probably going to be smaller. And then that's going to go into a big pool. So they don't even allow you to even really explain how it's going to benefit you financially. So let's say you're paying $300 a month in a premium. That $300 is going to go away and probably be replaced by something much cheaper. You'll probably end up paying maybe $150 or something like that. So you're taking home more money now because of this Medicare for all, but they won't even allow you to even explain it that way. And so again, when we talk about all of these things on these networks and stuff, it is put out there for garbage. They don't explain how we got here. You know, they just say, this is bad, this is good. We're going to let people argue with each other for 2 minutes, and then we're going to go to a commercial.
That's crazy. And again, just for everybody that's just now tuning in, this is my special guest, Frank W. Johnson. He is a teacher and activist from Memphis, Tennessee, born and raised. Country boy, but he's extremely smart. And so he's the best of both worlds. And a very nice guy. I'm so happy to have him here. And just make sure that you guys are all liking and subscribing to the Fly Nubian King Network. Just make sure you subscribe to their channel, hit the notification bell, and hit those likes. Hit like. And please leave a comment, a question, so that way we can come back and answer these if you have any for Frank or myself. Also, if you want to learn how to manage your money, go subscribe to flynubianmoney.com. That's another place. I know a lot of us we're just talking about money. If you want to learn how to manage your money better, go to flynubianmoney.com. So Frank, since we were just talking about media, I think this is a good segue to kind of go into this. And I have a question about basically like the Democratic Party in a sense, and using celebrities, mainly like Black celebrities, to try to pull in the Black vote. Especially, I've been noticing like with hip hop. You know, I think Cardi B, Migos, and you know the list goes on and on. I think they recently pulled Ludacris. I think I saw something before with Joe Biden. They're going to be using him. I noticed they don't really use this same tactic when it comes to like the Jewish and Asian or any other communities by using an entertainer to speak for their community, to speak for them. Is it not that big of a deal, or is like what I'm saying an overreaction to my analysis, or is this a problem that we should really be speaking out against? Because I think
it is a problem. Yeah, it is. The Democratic Party. Now, I'm not going to get up here and tell anybody how to vote. Trump is, a maniac. He is. But what the Democratic Party has done is they've been real lazy the last 30 years. And let me give people some background on me. I do have an undergraduate degree in journalism. I have some experience in that. I've worked locally for the Shelby County Democratic Party. I've worked on the campaign for Carl Dean for governor. I'm right now working on the campaign for Marquita Bradshaw, who is a childhood friend. She's the first Black woman for Tennessee to actually get the Democratic nomination for Senate. And what you're going to find is the whole thing with celebrity. And Donald Trump kind of did it too. He kind of did it, but the Democratic Party, let's address them. Because what we have seen over the last 30 years is that they actually have turned more corporate or more what they call right. They've turned to neoliberalistic policies just like the Republicans have. The Republicans just don't try to sugarcoat it. They're all for big business because big business pays them. And this whole thing with Black celebrity comes from a laziness, because Black people are the Democratic Party's most loyal voting base, but yet they barely do anything to help that base, which is, and I'm talking about policy, I'm talking about what affects the African-American community. And so what they're doing now, but rather than get out here in these streets for the last 3 years, almost 4 years, and really do grassroots work, go talk to people, do the things that really a party is supposed to do when it's trying to protect its highest voting base, they don't want to do. And so we live in a celebrity obsessed culture, but that is really, celebrity doesn't hold as much weight as it did 10 or 15 years ago, because people are hurting so bad. But what you have is a mindset of people who have been doing things this one way for so long that they don't know how to change. They don't know how to adjust and adapt, and they don't want to adjust and adapt. Right now, I think Donald Trump's people in like Michigan are just hitting the ground hard. They're door knocking, they're doing all this kind of stuff. And what are our Democrats doing? Like you said, they're going to get celebrities to do another television commercial or another ad, but they're not in the streets with the people. They're not listening to what their base wants, just like they did 4 years ago, just like they did 4 years before that, and just like they have been doing, with the exception of Obama's first campaign. Obama really did do grassroots. And notice what happened in that first campaign. You had this big turnout. Did you not have a big turnout? Because he did what? Grassroots. He got in the streets and he did something. Now, what he did when he got in there is a whole different story. But they don't want to get out here in the streets and touch people and energize people. And so people have just gotten tired. And so they think they can just come in, hey, let's put LeBron, let's put Jay-Z, let's just put a popular face on it, and, let's just keep going. And what they don't understand is now people are tired of that, because people are hurting. And we are hurting under both Republican administrations and Democratic. And so, yeah, it is a pandering, but they don't know. I mean, you got the same people, the same strategists making these decisions, the same way they did for Hillary Clinton. And they're not adjusting themselves to what people want. And so they just think, oh, we slap celebrity on it, everything's going to be all right. And then if they fail at it, notice, if they fail, it's not going to be their fault. It's going to be, well, the Black folk didn't show up to vote, which is a lie. Because, notice how they did us with Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was elected, wasn't elected. Hillary Clinton did win the popular vote. But the majority of white voters, and that includes Democrat and Republican, voted for Donald Trump. And plus, the Electoral College handed him that presidency. But the story and the narrative that was pushed out was what? Black people didn't show up to vote. That's a lie. We voted more for not Donald Trump, but Hillary Clinton than any other demographic. This includes Hispanics. This includes whites. We were 88% for Hillary Clinton. 88%. And so they have just gotten to this phase where they are just lazy about getting out and reaching their voter base. And they've been suffering for it.
So I've been seeing that a few people have been saying, like, why aren't, even like my coworker has mentioned, he's like, I'm kind of tired of them asking these celebrities, about really important issues. He's like, they know about music. Like, for instance, Cardi B. Cardi B knows music. Not saying that she can't speak on and talk about other things, but she didn't go to school for these things. She doesn't have a deep history of studying this and speak. Like when you have people like Sean King or Tamika Mallory, and even like that instance where Charlemagne the God, he asked a question about reparations, and he was asking Biden some tougher questions, not really throwing those softball questions. And ever since then, Biden hasn't really been talking to anybody like that. He's been talking to like Cardi B, and they've been asking like, we need to get Trump out. Like, what do we do to get Trump out? And it's nothing that's really asking.
No substance.
Yeah, no tangibles or anything like, hey, what are you going to give us? Yeah. So like, why is that? And I think even Malcolm X talked about that.
But you're spot on with it, because what people are asking for now, you know, and even though I don't really care that much for Charlemagne the God, but he's spot on. They don't want a fundamental change, and that is what's required in the system now. See, what we have to remember, both of these parties bow to the corporate dollar. One, again, is just honest about it, the Republicans. The Democrats kind of rub your head and say nice things while they rip you off too. Both of them are beholden. Go and check these people's campaign contributions. Look at where they're getting campaign dollars from. You're going to see that they're getting from the exact same people as the Republicans. But to actually bring about the change that is needed and that people are really asking for right now, they're going to have to come up off some of that money. They're going to have to come up off these things that they've been doing, and they don't want to do that. I think one of the first things that Biden said is that nothing is going to fundamentally change. But fundamental change is what we need. Trump, and again, let's be clear, Trump did not fall out of the sky. We have been moving towards this point since I was a child. I'm 43 years old. I have been watching it move. I have been watching people settle, work more, and get less. I have seen it in my own lifetime with my own self. There was a time 30 years ago where you could work a factory job here in Memphis for $10 an hour and bring home money. But I watched that disappear. Now that's temp work. You know, now they can fire you as they choose to, because what? All of these states have gone right to work. And so we have been pushed more and more and more to the side. I mean, we have been pushed more and more to the margins. And so now the only way, there can be no more, you know, this little cute stuff we say about reform, it's cute, but it's not going to change anything fundamentally. It's not going to change. We need public health care for all, because people are going bankrupt because of medical bills. I don't know if you know Wendy Thomas here, used to work for the Commercial Appeal. She has her own newspaper now. She broke a story last year about Methodist Hospital and all of its subsidiaries, and how they were going in and suing people that could not afford to pay them, even though the hospital gets grants to cover the cost for people they can't pay. They had a woman that they had taken to court 2 or 3 times, garnishing her wages, and she was only making $11 to $12 a year. I mean, $11 to $12 an hour. And by that one article that Wendy Thomas published, they ended up forgiving, I think, about $56,000 in debt. But why did they incur this debt? Because we have a for-profit healthcare system. We are the only major industrial country that does not have a public healthcare system. We base healthcare on what you can pay. Now, look at this pandemic. We've had 30 to 40, maybe even 50 million people that have lost their jobs. So the first thing they lost is they not only lost their jobs, they lost their income, but they lost what else? Healthcare. Because our healthcare is tied to what? Jobs. So right there, that's a fundamental change that needs to happen. But again, we have 2 parties that are beholden to who? Big Pharma and healthcare. They're paying for re-election costs. They're doing all this stuff. And when they give you that money, they expect a return on their investment. Because what a lot of these companies will do, if you don't do what they say and they've given you money, when you come up for re-election, they'll pay somebody else to run against you, or to what they call primary you, to let you know that either you do what we say or we can find somebody else that will. That's the problem. But at the same time, what do we need? Fundamental change. And we got a party that doesn't want to give us that fundamental change. They're going to be fine because they're protected. We're not. We're not. And they don't want to ask those questions because it's going to cut deep. It's going to cut into what they are doing. And they don't want to answer those questions. Yeah, they want to cheer and cheerlead and say, we need to get rid of Trump. And we do need to get rid of Trump. But at the same time, what do you do after you get rid of him? So on January of next year, when you walk into that office, Trump is already gone, if he leaves, because I even think that's going to be a fight. I think we're going to see some real ugliness in these streets. But what do you do after? Because the pandemic is still with us. And future pandemics are coming. There's going to be more of a breakdown. The stock market is going to collapse. So what are you going to do to correct that? And they don't want to answer those questions because it will cut deep. So they're going to go where people are not going to present those questions to them.
Man, it's a lot when you see all of this stuff going on, and just, I mean, which you went a really deep dive in there talking about the money, basically follow the money. And it kind of makes sense now looking back when there was the Democratic debates. And they kept every time I think Bernie was talking, like it seemed like it was such a smear against Bernie. And I was just like, it seems like it's a concerted effort, to basically say that, no, his Medicare for All isn't going to work like on multiple stations. And it's just like, man, like they're not really giving him a fresh shake, basically. As and I think I remember even in that debate between him and Joe, they were like, oh, Joe clearly won. And it was just like, did we watch the same thing? It was just
what did we just say? You got networks. Okay, so let's talk about it. You got MSNBC, you got CNN, and you have Fox. CNN and MSNBC function as the media arm of the Democratic Party, like Fox functions as the conservative arm for the network for the Republicans. All of these people get their advertising dollars from who? The same companies, the same corporations. And so what they're going to do is they're going to go against, and then when they want to challenge stuff, they just get on the bullhorn. Who controls the bullhorn? Who controls MSNBC? Who controls CNN? So what they did with Bernie, and people can say what they want to. Let's go back and let's investigate, what really happened. Bernie went in all these primaries. Then all of a sudden, South Carolina. All of a sudden, notice how you saw this big, huge barrage and this push for Joe Biden. That's easily explainable. They pulled people out of nowhere. Phone calls were made to tell folks to drop out. And then they got their people on CNN and MSNBC to scream Joe Biden as loudly as they could. Because what we do here in America, we think that the person that talks the loudest is right. And that's not the case. It wasn't that Bernie Sanders didn't have this with black voters. He had a black campaign manager. He had Nina Turner with him. I mean, God, he was doing all of this work. And yet and still, they got people, they coalesced around Joe Biden. Let's go back and look at the articles, I think from last year, where we had people like Jeffrey Bezos saying that if Elizabeth Warren got the nomination, they were going to go and support Trump. See how we kind of forget that little stuff, little things like that. And also there was a story about Jeffrey Bezos asking Bloomberg to run if Elizabeth Warren got the nomination, because he was afraid that an Elizabeth Warren or maybe even a Bernie Sanders would get the nomination. And so they said that he suggested that Bloomberg jump in the race. What did Bloomberg do at the end of last year? Jumped in the race. And not only did he jump in the race, but they changed the rules to allow him to jump in the race. Because if you remember, Kamala Harris and Cory Booker had just had to drop because they didn't meet the fundraising goal. And they completely changed the rule to allow Bloomberg in. But again, Forbes magazine wrote a whole article about that last year. But again, United States of amnesia, we don't remember. I think Bernanke, he even said that if a Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren got the nomination, they were going to go over and support Trump. Now notice, we don't shame millionaires and billionaires for saying that they're going to support Trump, but we support regular people. We bash regular people for saying that, but nobody had that bashing for these rich people, who don't want their cash flows interrupted, who want to manipulate elections and vote for Trump if they don't get what they want. We don't bash them, but we bash people on our level for just merely asking questions of candidates, that we're supposed to like. So yeah, they just went to the bullhorn. They got on the bullhorn. They got, the press and they control these news outlets. So what do? You scream to the top of your lungs, Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden. And then when the Bernie people come in, you say, shut up. And you scream Biden and Biden again. And so people ran to the polls, and they, because we're not following really in politics, we kind of listen to what we're told and we go do it. We wake up every 4 years in the middle of a presidential election and everybody's smart. Everybody knows everything, but nobody knows anything. And we don't listen to the people that's actually speaking to our needs. Bernie Sanders had me with Medicare for All and student loan debt, because those are two things that we are facing. But again, who controls the access? Who has the access? Who has the power to get those media networks to all speak on one accord? And that's what they did. They just coalesced around them, and the power structure that they are told them, we're going to push Joe Biden out. And that's really simple. And they're going to disguise it. And then probably what you're going to see in about 6 months to a year, you're going to see an article somewhere that's going to see how the Democrats manipulated things so Bernie Sanders couldn't win. Same thing they did in 2016. If we go back and look at that, there was manipulation done in that. And it's going to be buried on page 13 or something like that of the New York Times, so don't nobody notice it. But that's exactly what they did.
Man, it's funny because I definitely know a lot about just you're speaking up about something and people are like, oh, be quiet, and all this. And I've been seeing it a lot too.
It's a sense of bullying. It's
yeah.
bullying.
So for everybody that's tuning in, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure that you hit this like button and subscribe to Fly Nubian King. We're gonna have more interviews like this, and make sure you share it so that way the people can know what's going on. Frank is giving us gold here with all of this and the behind the scenes of why these things are happening. Also, if for those who want to start your own business, because we need to start being more self-reliant, and you want to start your own business, you don't know how, go to flynubianbusiness.com. That's flynubianbusiness.com. So you can learn to start your own business, and we'll definitely be more than happy to help you figure out how to do that. Again, make sure you're hitting the like button and sharing. Speaking of what you were just talking about with people bullying and things like that, there's been so we all know that Trump is a very divisive president,
and he always has been.
Right, and he's been stoking flames of prejudice amongst people who mean non-white people harm. But why do people immediately jump to, like, you must be a Trump supporter, or your vote doesn't count if you withhold your vote, when someone chooses to critique the Democratic Party, maybe the Democratic nominee, or when they withhold their vote? Why is that the thing that the first
because
thing
we don't know because we don't know how to talk about politics. Again, we've been conditioned to be this way. Notice the people that are really plugged in and they kind of keep up with it. They're not the ones that sing. They're not the one that's beating people over the head for asking questions. As a matter of fact, I was so happy last year that Black people, and in particular Black people, were asking questions of Kamala, of Corey, and of Joe Biden. I was so happy because I'm like, finally, we're learning. We're learning that. But it all boils down to this. People don't know. And because we don't know, and because we have this attitude here in this country to where we cannot say that we don't know something. We always have to let on that we're all knowing and all seeing. And, we just can't say, I don't know. And so that, and that falls back into this, oh, well, I don't know what to say, but CNN then told me to say 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 things, and I'm just gonna go with that because we don't know how. We don't know what's going on, and we don't know how to listen, and we don't know how to say I don't know, because nobody wants to say that they don't know. Everybody, and it's funny because what I love is people want to have a discussion with me, and they want to say stuff like that. And I'm saying, well, I'm one of the ones that told you that Donald Trump could be elected while you were drinking the Kool-Aid then. I knew when Donald Trump walked down that escalator, I said, here it comes. Because if you look at the years before that, as soon as Obama was elected, what did you see? You saw this white backlash, did you not? Let's apply that to history. After the civil rights, after the 1960s, what did you see? Nixon came right into office and declared the war on drugs. Ronald Reagan amped it up, but Nixon started it. Nixon came in with that law and order rhetoric. He came in with that we have to protect our communities, when in other words, it was code for these Black people and these other people were in the streets during the 1960s. You all are scared and we're going to do something about that. That was a what? That was a backlash to the progress that was made during those years. Let's go back even further. Right after slavery, what happened? Black people got free. They ran for office. They started the first public school systems all over the country. We had whole towns like, what was that? Wilmington, North Carolina, that were completely Black controlled. Black wealth was being built. And what happened? The president pulled the Union troops out of the South. The people that were over the Confederacy were allowed to come back into the South, go back into power. And what did you see? What did you see? You saw Reconstruction. You saw the creation of Jim Crow. You saw these big pushbacks. These whole cities and these whole communities that blacks built up were burnt to the ground. So after every great push of progress, no matter how we feel about it, it's always a white pushback. And so with his and we saw it. Now, I got my problems with Barack Obama, but no president had ever been called a liar during the State of the Union address. When that man yelled out and called him a liar, nobody was ever disrespected. And I think that feeds into a lot of the sympathy that we have for Obama. But at the same time, we still have to be critical of him because he got up there and he pushed and he maintained the empire as well. He signed the bill about indefinite detentions. What do we see at our borders now? We see so-called illegals or people that don't have paperwork being detained indefinitely. Who amped that up? That was during Obama's term. We go back to Clinton. We had a meltdown in 2008 because of our banks doing whatever they wanted to do. Well, Bill Clinton in the 1990s destroyed a policy called Glass-Steagall. Glass-Steagall was put in right after the crash, I think, of 1929 to stop banks from doing what they were doing that caused the crash in the first place. Bill Clinton completely wiped that stuff out. And almost 10 years later, you had a collapse of the what? Banking industry. And so what we have is we just have this same cycle going on and over again because we're not stopping to say, look, let's take a moment to think about what we're doing and look at what we're doing. And we keep falling into the same thing. And then we get bullied for even having that thought. We get bullied for criticizing. Like I said, I was happy when we were like, no, let's look at Kamala's record. Let's look at Corey's record. Let's look at these people's records and see what they have stood on in the past. Because if you want to talk about holding people accountable, that's how you do it. You don't do it. And then notice how we have so much forgiveness for, say, a Joe Biden for the crime bill. When we talk, and then even in that, you see black people justifying the crime bill now all of a sudden. Before Joe Biden, they were against it. Now, well, black people, and it was this. No, that crime bill was not a response to crime in the street. Let's just be clear. That was a corporate giveaway. That's what they took, and that's what they allowed to basically monetize putting people in jail. What we have to understand is these laws and stuff are not to protect people, because actually the crack cocaine epidemic was subsiding by the early 90s. And I know this because I was alive. I was going to high school during this time. It had subsided, and in the 1980s, they had already dealt with it with mandatory minimums and all these other things. That 94 crime bill was a corporate bill that was incentivizing and monetizing putting people in jail, because now private prisons saw their rise. Corrections Corporation of America, they've recently rebranded. They were founded in Nashville. They were started in 1981. And what that bill did was just say, okay, well, look, the more people you lock up, the more money we're going to give you. And that's really all that it was. That's all that it was. And so when we go and we dig this stuff up and we get criticized for talking about it, that's an attempt to silence information. That's an attempt to shut folks up.
So I guess my question after that is, like, when they are talking about, I guess, well, when you say, yeah, like, of course, you being a Trump supporter, if you critiquing,
right,
Biden or the left, what about for those who are basically saying, like, I'm gonna withhold my vote, or maybe I don't even know who I'm voting for yet, but I'm trying to hold them accountable, question them. And there are people who say, your vote doesn't count if you withhold your vote, or if you just choose not to vote. What do you say to that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, as much as we can disagree, people have a right to do with their vote what they want. That was the whole point of the Voting Rights Act, for you to have access and to make your own decisions. You might not agree with it, but that's their right. That's their right if they want to withhold. But if they don't want to vote, what we need to be finding out. I got a good friend named Sijuwala Crawford, who has done organizing in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and a couple of other cities. And he says this all the time when he sees people attack people like that. The first thing he says is, Well, what do you have to offer them? You know, what conversations, you know, have you had with that person to understand why they want to withhold their vote or why they don't want to vote? And people can't answer him. And he says, we have to come out of this shaming people for everything. You know, the shaming has never worked, and it's not working now, because what you're doing is you can't have a conversation because you really don't understand yourself. And that's really what a lot of this is. And so you're going to shame another person for not agreeing with you versus having an informed conversation to really get to the root of why they're not voting. You know, those are the conversations that we need to have, not this shaming, because shaming has never worked. People are already alienated. Half of the country is already alienated. They feel that their votes don't count. And then here you want to come and shame them. They're already hurting anyway. But then if I can turn around and ask you a question about voting, you probably won't know either. But see, that's our game in this country. And not just with voting, but with so many other things. You know, just, oh, well, you're not going along with what CNN is saying, so I'm going to shame you and you this. No. That's not how we progress. And that's really why we have stayed stagnant for so long. But again, most of these people, if you ask them, they have no clue. They have no clue. They're just repeating and they're just mirroring behavior that they've heard people say and that they've seen people do. Because we don't know how to have civilized conversations about facts and information and historical events. You know, again, wake up every 4 years, you look at CNN, you get pumped up on the talking points, and you just go. And honestly, that's what they like. Because if you have an election cycle that's going on that, you never have to talk about issues. You never have to talk about what people want and what people need. And I guarantee you, even if Joe Biden gets into office, I can guarantee you next presidential election cycle, you're going to see the same thing. Because see, now they know that they can get away with it. And see, but I don't even think that that's going to work, because more people, like for instance, the people that are in the street now, they're not connecting to this political atmosphere, because they know it's going to take more. You remember a few months ago when all of these companies were saying, oh, they support Black Lives Matter and all this kind of stuff. And people were like, no, because why? Because we've fallen for that before. You know, you're going to paint the wall with Black Lives Matter, but then go into the State House and pass more legislation that's anti-Black. These people got it now. You know, I heard Chris Hedges say this. He said, I think they got it. They're not falling for it. And I think that's why we see the push now even so much more from the political class, because they know the streets ain't listening. The streets know your game. You know, people are, and I mean, no matter how much you beat people over the head with it, people are still saying, I don't trust Joe. You know, I don't trust Kamala. I don't trust the Democratic Party. And they don't want, they're upset. They're upset over that. And so, I mean, and it's a great time, but it's a scary thing too, but we should not be shaming people. We need to be having real discussions, and we need to make sure that we are prepared to have those discussions. And a lot of people are not. So because they can't have the discussion, they resort to shaming, beating folk over the head.
Well, there's also people who have been saying that even the Democratic Party has, I think even Michelle Obama has mentioned this before, like your ancestors died for your right to vote, so you should vote, you know, because.
Well, our ancestors they didn't die, they were murdered. You know, they also died for us to have the decision, to have the ability to make the decision. They also fought for us to be able to think, and they also fought for equity. And then let's even talk about this. You know, how did our people get the right to vote anyway? Through protesting. So, I mean, again, that's another shame. That's another shame attack. And I, got respect for Michelle, but hey, if you're not speaking to the issues of systematic racism, honestly, I don't want to hear your voice. If your voice is coming out to strictly chastise Black people, again, Black people who are the strongest voting Democratic voting bloc, more so than anybody else. I put this joke out and I say, well, while we're checking for Black people to see who they're going to vote, let's make sure that we're checking with white people. Let's make sure, honestly, let's check with white people. Because over 50% of white voters voted for Donald Trump. This is not Republican voters. This is Republican and Democratic voters. And remember, Black people, we are 15% of the population of this country. That translates to about 40 million people. we don't have enough votes to really, we can make a difference in elections, but white voters outnumber us. And again, it's going to go back to Democratic Party. Get your ass in the street. Go to people's houses. Stop skipping over people that you think are a lost cause and talk to people. You had almost 4 years to do that. Did you do that? No. You hollered about Russia. You hollered about this. You hollered about Facebook ads. And it's so funny how Russia got these Facebook ads to stop black people from voting, but yet there's no mention of voter suppression. You know, the gutting of the Voting Rights Act, with really the Democratic Party has been largely silent on. You know, we got, what was that in Kansas, where they moved the voting location out of the whole city. You know, voter suppression against black communities is real, but we have not seen the fight from the Democratic Party to actually fight that. They said that the redistricting that was done in North Carolina by the Republicans was almost done with surgical precision. Where is our National Democratic Party? What we have is small voting rights groups that are out here filing lawsuits and all that kind of stuff. But over large, where is the Democratic Party on that issue? They've been quiet. But yet, we're the whipping post when they don't get what they want. We're the whipping post. Oh, black folks didn't show. Yes, we did. Yes, we did. We've been showing up. Where have you been?
Yeah, it's for everyone who's tuning in, make sure you're hitting the like button. I'm getting so lost in this conversation, I keep forgetting this. Make sure you're hitting this like button, share. Also, if you want to shop and get black gear, so support black businesses, you can check out Fly Nubian Queen. They have their own gear. So go to shopfnq.com to shop FNQ. They have some really amazing stuff there. So check it out. You'll be supporting black businesses, black creatives, and you'll be giving back to your own community. And again, just make sure you guys are hitting the like button. Please leave your comments, your questions. I definitely want to see them, so that way we can ask Frank the next time he comes back some of the questions that you guys have. With everything that you were just saying, I find it kind of interesting, going back to, I guess, Biden, and I've been seeing, talking about the crime bill and things like that, all of that that's brought up. I've been seeing a few people say that, oh, well, that's in the past. You're talking about something, a decade or two ago. He's probably changed, and let's not critique him now. Let's just wait. We'll hold him accountable once he gets in office.
They won't do that. They won't do that. Well, okay, so let's talk about the crime bill. Okay, I can go further than the crime bill. Remember what I said a few minutes ago about the taking away of Glass-Steagall. He had a hand in it. There's also the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which remember what we said earlier about there being such a few number of the five telecommunications companies owns all of these networks. That 1996 Telecommunications Act. Let's talk about NAFTA, which shipped jobs from America over to China, into Mexico, all these things. Let's talk about why we can't put student loans on our bankruptcy with the Bankruptcy Act of 2005, which he supported. We can go on and on with Joe Biden's record, but it's not a good record. It's neoliberalistic. He's with the whole, let's give everything to rich people and let's take away protections of consumers. So he has had a whole career of supporting neoliberalistic and pro-corporate policy. So we can talk about the crime bill. We can go further and further on. I mean, I know many people right now are, trying to file bankruptcy, would love to put their student loans on there, but they can't do it because of what? And actually, the bankruptcy bill was proposed, I think, around 99 or 2000. And guess who stopped it from being passed in that time frame? Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren went to Hillary Clinton because Bill Clinton was still in office. She met with Hillary Clinton and explained to her how devious this bill was, how it was going to harm people. Hillary Clinton got it, took it back to Bill. That bill was rejected then. But then when Hillary got in Congress, her, Joe Biden, and the Democratic Party went right along with it. And Elizabeth Warren stopped that bill. So again, we can go on and on about these people's histories and about these legacies because Joe Biden has been consistent. He's been consistently anti-Black. He's also been consistently pro-corporate. And that's 47 years. Go back and look at his record. Look at some of the things he said. Notice if you go back and you look at some of his older speeches, notice how he doesn't have a stutter. Now all of a sudden he has a stutter. Let's go into some other underlying issues that Joe Biden has too that people don't want to admit. But no, again, he is being rebranded right before our very eyes. And even to bring up what he has done, you get beat over the head for bringing it up. And I will say this. So we have forgiveness for powerful white men, but we don't have forgiveness for the people that they put in jail for minor drug charges that are still doing time, that still have felonies on their records right now that can't go and find jobs. We don't have the forgiveness for them, but we have forgiveness for the powerful people that put these policies in place and didn't do anything about them. But now they show up and they want to say, I'm sorry. Well, you know what? Can my cousin say he's sorry and get his felony expunged? No, he cannot. Can these people that suffered with the 3 strikes laws, can they show up now and say, and a lot of them are sorry. A lot of them are trying to get back and contribute, but they can't. Look at what they just did in Florida, where they gave these people their rights to vote back, but now the people came back along and said, well, you have to pay all of your court costs. They're not forgiving them, are they? They keep bringing up what they did, but still we have forgiveness for powerful white men. See, and that's what I ask too when they say that stuff to me. Well, we should just forgive. Okay, well, let's forgive every person that got a felony under that prison plan. Are we willing to do that? No. Then don't tell me about forgiving him. And also, voting for him does not mean that we wipe out everything he's done. As a matter of fact, we need to be more critical. We need to remind them that, guess what? I remembered everything you did. And the way, we got 2 crappy candidates. You're the almost lesser of 2 crappy ones. So I'm going to constantly remind you of what a crappy choice that you are. And that's what we need to be doing instead of going around here on a forgiveness parade for somebody that basically pushed corporate power on us and is really not sorry. They're really not sorry. Because if you did, you will be working to change that. Bill Clinton now could be doing work to change that, but he's not. He chooses to stand up at funerals and dog out Black Panther leaders because he wanted to do that. But yet, these are the people that we want to give forgiveness to. I'm sorry, I don't have forgiveness for them. Now, what I do have, I understand he's the better of these little crappy candidates. So yeah, I'm going to vote for him, but I'm going to be very vocal about how disgusted I am with this vote. And I'm also going to be very vocal about what you have done to me and my community in the past. And no, you are not forgiven. But again, we get beat down with all of this. It's respectability again. It's that respectability notion. Oh, well, you don't have to do anything. And that's all right. 2 or 3 things, 2 or 3 truths can exist at one time. Crappy candidate, he has harmed us in the past, and we feel that we have to vote for him because, we got to get Trump out. But these other truths exist too.
Yeah, just everybody that's tuning in, make sure that you're liking, and sharing this because more people need to hear this. Like Frank is really speaking on some truths about all this stuff. Just like you said, it's a bullying tactic.
It is. It is. And it's just amazing to know people like in this city, some people that I know who, and I don't call people felons because felon is not a group. It's not a race. It's not. These people have served time and they, and they're out. And do you even not know what they can't even, let's say if they have a person that lives in public housing, they can't even move in with that person because the whole family could get thrown out of public housing because they're allowing a quote unquote convicted felon to live there. You can't apply for student loans to go to school. So all of these doors are closed to you. They basically make you just this person with a black hole around you. Yet we see criminality coming from the political class every day. These people know that Donald Trump has not been paying his taxes. They know that. But has he done jail time? No. Donald Trump actually ran with a guy named Roger Stone, who I think he just pardoned. And Roger Stone is a vile human being, but they all came under the tutelage of a guy named Roy Cohn, who was a devious man, who was just, I mean, a horrible human being. When they say horrible in a dictionary, they got a picture of him next to it. And none of these people, all of the crimes that they've done, the lives that they destroyed, we don't see them going to jail for anything. But here we are, having to be punished 3 or 4 times for this one crime that we did 20 years ago. Why should Joe Biden be forgiven? We don't hold that forgiveness for people, regular people that look like us, that are really out here trying to make themselves better. And let's not even talk about how these programs in the crime bill, how they were implemented. Let's think about Khalif Browder. You know, Khalif Browder is the one that we know about. But Khalif Browder was accused of stealing a backpack, which he did not do. And then he sat in jail for how many years? 3 years. And people don't even know this, because what prosecutors can do is, and this is what the crime bill allowed, these prosecutors can come in and they can stack the deck against you. You had no eyewitnesses of him stealing that backpack. So what you should have done, he should have been released. But no, Khalif Browder got in that cell at I think he was 16 to 17 years old. They tried to make him take a plea deal to go home. He refused the plea deal because he said, I didn't do a crime. I didn't do it. I want to stand before a jury, which is supposed to be my constitutional right. What did they do with Khalif? They put more charges on him because he dared stand up for his rights. And we know what happened to Khalif Browder. Now you just think about, Khalif Browder is the one we heard about. You think about what happens to Black and brown men and women and children every day in this system. And the first thing that we will say is, well, they shouldn't have did what they did. Knowing how with Breonna Taylor, look at how we found that this police department has just made up stuff about this case. And this is not the first time that they have done that. The reason why we have a Breonna Taylor is because they've been doing this the whole time. People have been letting them get off. You know, John, Amy Wyrick here. They have to retry her cases because they found her guilty of hiding evidence in cases. Her assistant DA, Tom Henderson, same charge. He was disbarred by the state of Tennessee, but they allowed him to retire. She didn't even fire him. But we have forgiveness for that, but not for the people that look like us. And see, that's why I get so furious with this mindset, because here we are again justifying our own mistreatment just to squeeze a Joe Biden through that door. When a few months ago, we were saying, oh, well, these prosecutors need to be burned. Oh, think about the Central Park 5. Think about these folks. Think about that. But then we're trying to squeeze him through this door, which is a door we don't even have to squeeze him through. You can vote for him, still hold him accountable. But we just have to dust him up and make him look all pretty. No, you don't. He got blood on his hands. Let him have the blood on his hands and hold him accountable for it. And I mean, for real, hold him accountable. Remind him, and we should be reminding the Democratic Party that this is a gesture from us. You know, this is us being nice to you because you've abandoned us. We should be reminding them every chance that we get. Yeah, we know that Trump is, you know what? We know he has to go, but just be reminded that as soon as you step in that White House, we're going to be on that White House lawn looking at you to correct all the mistakes that you've made in the last almost 50 years of your career. That's the aspect that we should be taking. And then they should be out here capping for themselves, not us defending them to each other. He should be on this television right now saying something. Nancy Pelosi should be holding a press conference right now, but they're not doing that. But they're using their bullies to get out here and beat us into submission. And I'm from South Memphis. I like to fight. And I mean, really, I got hands, I got knees, and I got feet.
No, man, I definitely feel, because it's been very tiring. Man, it's just like that quote. I think James Baldwin quote, to be Black and conscious.
To be in a constant state of rage.
Yeah, because it's like, man, you see this stuff, and I've been beat up a few times myself too, to where just from me questioning and not saying, and I guess the first thing that people will say is like, man, you trying to tell people, you know, what you're not going to vote. You're not going to vote. You're telling people not to vote. I'm not telling anybody not to vote.
And you notice how the responses are always the same.
Yeah.
You trying to tell, no. You notice how the response, because they don't know, that's conditioning. They don't know what else to do because they don't know what questions to ask themselves. And that's the nature of fear. This country lives, breathes, and eats fear. And I mean, one of the things that got me when the pandemic first hit and people were out here saying, well, you need to not live by faith, not by fear. Well, that's funny because when black folks move into y'all neighborhood, y'all get fearful and y'all move out. So then you want to come tell me about fear? No, fear is in the fabric of this country. They sell fear. We've been in Iraq and Afghanistan for almost 20 years, based on the fear that somebody might come do something to y'all. Trillions of dollars wasted, lives still being lost to this day, but they sell it because of what? Fear. September the 11th happened, and everybody just went wild. There was one black person, one black representative. I think that's Miss Sheila Jackson out of California. She was the only person that stood up and said, we don't need to go to war right now. Let's take a look at ourselves. I remember her speech when it happened. I think she's still one of the representatives out there. But she said, let us take a step back and look at ourselves. She was the only one that stood up and said, we don't need to go. And look what has happened. We've destabilized Iraq. We've destabilized Syria and all those countries around it. We've destroyed Libya. We've destroyed all of these countries. Caused all this chaos because of fear. And that's what they use. That is what this system used. That was why we had the war on drugs. That's why we had all of this stuff. And now it's going to be used again because both candidates are screaming the law and order messaging. Both of them, Donald Trump and Biden. Oh, the protesters, but see, we got to have law and order. Okay, at what point? We have had no law. So why do you expect order? Both of them now are screaming the same law and order rhetoric. But we feel we have to squeeze Joe Biden in. We don't have to squeeze him through anything. He just is what he is. That's why I get frustrated with people with Donald Trump. Donald Trump has always been what he was. He's been broke, bankrupt. He was born with a silver gold spoon in his mouth. He's never really had to do anything for himself. He's run all of his businesses in the ground. He's always been disrespectful to women. He's always been racist. He's always been whatever vile thing you could be. And he's never changed. But somehow we think that through magic, and Chris Hedges calls it magical thinking, that when he stepped in there, he's going to be automatically transformed and he's going to be presidential. These presidents have done some of the most heinous things you can imagine, but they put a good suit on and that makes it all right. No, it doesn't. But again, these people have really no argument and no ground to stand on other than fear and not knowing.
Yeah, it's just interesting to see that all play out, and you know, this basically the shut up and vote. Just shut up and vote, and we'll figure it out later.
Not think.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been doing. That's what we've been doing. That's what they told us in 2016. And then and I think in 2012 there was a big fall off of voters, black voters in particular. And oh my God, the blacks are not voting. But we forgot that the Voting Rights Act was gutted. And that was, I think, they had designed these voter ID laws that they already knew weren't going to pass because Alabama, I think Shelby County, it's another Shelby County in Alabama, they were on the federal watch list since the 60s. So every time they passed a new voting law, it had to be verified or looked over by the federal government because of what they've done in the past. So as soon as they gutted the Voting Rights Act, the next day, that county pushed that voter ID law through. And see, even with the voter ID laws, so like for instance, you say, well, you have to have a government ID to vote, but they don't just tell you what type of government ID. So you got people, college students, with their college IDs. Colleges are what? They're federally supported. So you're telling me a college ID is not good enough? Or then you say they have people, I think a few people that had their housing, like they lived in public housing, so they had their IDs from public housing. That's federal government, isn't it? You can't use that ID. So you're saying it has to be a federal or state issued ID, but then when they bring you these IDs, you get to decide which IDs you're going to take and which ones you want. I know in one case, they allow people to use their gun license as ID, but not a college ID. See, one of the things, Carol Anderson, if you don't know her as she's a history professor at Emory University in Atlanta. And she said, it's always clothed in rationality. We have to protect the integrity of voting. So they did a study, I think an 8-year study from like 2006 to 2014. There were like 1 billion votes that they looked over and only 31 cases of voter fraud, 31 out of 1 billion. But again, attempt to do what? Suppress black vote, but then we don't talk about the suppression of black votes. But then we holler about how black folk didn't vote. But we never talk about the pushback. It's always a chastisement of the black community. But we never talk about what has been done to the black community or what we can do to stop it.
Yeah, it's just amazing how basically, I guess in a sense, you kind of brainwashed into beating up some of your own people, even when clearly, they mean well, and even like with the people who, and that whether they be at work or whether it be some of my friends or family who we may disagree on certain topics. It's all that, like I don't have any kind of, it's not like I don't want to talk to this person ever again. It's because I know there's a lot of families out there, and it's really dividing a lot of these homes. It's dividing friendships and things like over, just like you said, one person is defending Biden, the other person is critiquing Biden, but it's creating this huge chasm, that really shouldn't be. Just like you said, the communication isn't there because it's just, well, you should be doing this. You're like, well, why should I be doing? Well, your vote isn't gonna count, and people died for your right to vote and all this. And it's just like, I hear you. I get all of that, but what is changing? I mean, that's my thing that I've been asked. I mean, if you really look back in the past and you've seen what has happened and you've seen what has happened to us and how it affects us to this day, same thing like you're saying. What has changed outside of actually Dr. Claude Anderson? I don't know if you listened to him, but I think he mentioned something basically where it's like if we're on a ladder, right? White people here at the top, maybe it's just, Jewish people, right under the Asians, Hispanics, and Black. So if the economy is doing well, we rise up, right? Everyone rises up, but guess who's still on the bottom?
You're still on the bottom.
You're still on the bottom. So things are better in a sense, but nothing has fundamentally changed for us.
Well,
you might have
the next time someone tells you about voting and we should just do all this voting, remind them that voting is not the only thing that we can do to invoke change. Voting has never, you didn't vote your way to a 40-hour work week in this country. There was a time when your employer could work, the crap out of you and work your children. I tell everybody to go look up Ludlow, Colorado. Look up the history of the labor in this country. Look up West Virginia, which is heavy Republican now, but back in the day, it was a Union stronghold where they would have gunfights. The term goon or corporate goon, that's where it comes from. Because these Rockefellers and these other, wealthy families who are still, basically the same people, they would hire goons to go out and beat the workers up and kill the workers. They didn't vote themselves out of that. What did they do? They resisted. They did work stoppages, strikes. They shut things down. Henry Ford. We love talking about Henry Ford. Henry Ford, yada, yada. Henry Ford was anti-Semitic. He was one of the biggest supporters of Hitler. Hitler had a picture of Henry Ford on his wall. FDR had to send the National Guard to his plant in Detroit to protect the workers from Henry Ford's corporate goons, when they said that we are going to do a strike, and they occupied his factory. Henry Ford was sending in his corporate goons to beat and even murder some of those striking workers. FDR had to send in the National Guard to protect the workers. Did they vote their way to 40 hours a week in rights and benefits? No. They did resistance, real resistance, striking, shutting off the money flow. They didn't go, oh, well, you know, let's just wait till November and then maybe we, no. They said, you're going to give us this. If you don't give it to us, we're going to shut down everything you do. See, that's the true history in this country. Now ask yourself, how did it go from doing all of this to just voting? How did it go from that? You didn't even get the right to vote. You didn't get the voting right. Judge Joe Brown, a few years ago when he was running for DA, and I met him at one of his fundraisers, and he was talking to us. And you know, Judge Joe Brown can get crunk when he wants to. Judge Joe Brown told me something that night. He said, go and look up the Voting Rights Act. Go and look at the Civil Rights Act and look at these bills and look at the wording of these bills. He said, don't let anybody tell you what's in it. Go read it for yourself. He said, that wasn't passed because, you know, King got up and made a few nice speeches. He said those bills were passed because they were actually afraid that we were going to burn this country down. And when you start realizing that in history, in the history of this country, that is what has really gotten changed. When people took to the streets and burned stuff down and said no, when they stopped businesses from happening, when they shut down, when they striked, that's what brought the change. But see, certain powers don't want you to realize that now. They don't want you to realize that that you have more power than one vote. You have people power. One of the reasons why they murdered Fred Hampton is because Fred Hampton was going into the Appalachian Mountains and talking to the rednecks. They were talking to all of these people who we usually don't talk to, getting them on the side of all of us standing together. And that's why the FBI got Chicago PD to go at him, shoot him in his head. There is a power in that, and they don't want you to acknowledge that. Look at even now with the protest. And I knew that these things were going to happen because George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, all of these things happening. There was so much more in these protests than just the race thing, because what white people saw in this thing, they had lost their jobs. They saw a system that has abandoned them. And believe it or not, white people know how these police officers are too. Some of them just twist and turn when it's us, but they know how these police officers are. So that's why you saw the pushback in the streets that you did, because you had all of these people that had lost their jobs because of the pandemic, still don't know what's going to happen as far as them being evicted or them going back to work or them being, if they get sick, can they go to the hospital about it? So all of this frustration was mixed in with all of these protests that you saw. But you saw how they started trying to, the media and all of these different sources started putting out these random articles about, well, all of the black people are not at the protest. It's all white. They've gentrified the movement. What they were trying to do in that was create more divisions to stop people from coming out to the streets. And that's also why the pushback has been so hard. Because believe it or not, there is a power. And as much as we want to talk about the people that voted for Trump, even though they did ignore the racism that he openly exuded and the sexism and all that kind of stuff, they too have been abandoned. Last time you checked, Mississippi is still one of the poorest states in the country, but it's a Republican state, isn't it? Tennessee is one of the poorest poorest states in the country, Republican state. Kentucky, Republican poor state. And see, again, Republican Party been lying to them too. Mitch O'Connell hasn't been back to Louisville in years. He doesn't care anything about those folks. But they were told during the end of the 1960s by Nixon and by Lee Atwater and all these people, well, it's the big government helping the black folks. So let's hate big government and then let's hate the black folk. Meanwhile, they're taking stuff away from them too.
Mm-hmm. This it was something that you mentioned in there, because I forgot we just touched on this earlier before we started recording. Also, well, before I get into this, everyone just make sure that you're hitting the like button, subscribe to Fly Nubian King, because you're going to get more topics like this. Because we're taking a deep dive. We're taking a deep dive to ask the tough questions, because that's what the JT effect is about anyway, asking tough questions, critical thinking, forward thinking. And that's why I created this show. Also, this is gonna be it's motivation too. I know I was talking with a friend, I was like, no, motivating you. There's gonna be regular motivation, but also motivation for you to try to do better things. But yeah. So going back to, I mentioned meritorious manumission, and so basically, okay, I wanted to pull up a definition where it's just basically it's like a meritorious manumission could be granted to a slave who distinguished himself by saving the life of a white master or his property, inventing something that a white slave master could make a profit from, or snitching on a slave rebellion. And basically, manumission is defined as the formal process by which a slave owner can give his slaves their legal freedom. Slave owners use the promise of manumission to ensure their slaves' obedience, and often rewarded faithful servitude with manumission. So we were talking about, also when you were talking about people getting on the streets and everybody coming together and they're tired of this, that reminded me of when we were talking about how the NBA, all the LeBron James and all of the other basketball players, they were just like, you know what, we are tired of seeing us killed, and we're not playing anymore until something changes. And then sure enough, something happened where Michael Jordan and Barack Obama came in and told him, hey, go back to the court. Go back to the court. Let's play the game. And I just want to ask you, why, I mean, was that just because like, hey, we'll get this fixed, let's get back to work, or was there something else in mind with that?
I can tell you what it was too. Idea. You got to stop. You got to stop ideas. If they would have done that, guess what they would have done to so many other people around the country? Well, if LeBron and them doing it, we can do it too. So they have to stop ideas. Don't you remember during the government shutdown, early part of 2019? I don't know if your viewers remember that, but that was the longest government shutdown, I think, in history. And you remember the TSA workers weren't being paid. And they were coming to work for, weeks and not being paid. They don't know how they're going to pay their rents, anything like that. But if you remember, right before the shutdown ended, the TSA workers started doing something. They started calling out. They started calling out from work. And it began to escalate until I think the shutdown ended on a Friday. There was like I think about 3 days when the TSA workers began to call out so much, certain airports started shutting down. The morning that the shutdown ended, I think 2 airports shut down that day. And I think it was O'Hare and maybe LaGuardia or something in New York. But you had 2 airports that shut down because of what? TSA workers calling out. I think around 12 noon or 1 o'clock that day, the shutdown was over. And if you even go back now and you try to Google what happened with that strike or what happened during that, they're not completely honest. But the TSA workers stopped that shutdown. They stopped that government shutdown because of what? They started calling. I don't know if it was a concerted effort or just so happened that so many just said, screw it, I'm not going if I'm not being paid. But those airports started shutting down. And within an hour or 2, that whole government shutdown ended. See, and notice how you don't even hear that much talk about why it ended. Because what that is, if I see that worked, guess what that's going to do? That's going to signal to somebody in Oregon, to somebody in New York, to somebody in Florida. You know what? We do have the power to stop this stuff right where it is. So they have to stop that idea. So that's the reason why Obama and them jumped out and said, go on and play. That's what that was. Because just think, if those NBA players would have went on strike, because you saw the National Baseball League, they did the same thing. I think some hockey players, and the WNBA just been gangster the whole time. They just be like, we ain't playing nothing. You know, y'all forget this. But you saw how that idea started spinning. When they just announced it, it started spinning. And that's why they had to get in and stop that real quick, because an idea is contagious, because you're showing people, you know what? Let's just get together and let's go on and do what we got to do. We ain't even got to have everybody. We can just have enough to where it stops. And our economy is so fragile that all it takes is a few. You think a few months before that, when the black guy that led the strike against Amazon, and they caught the Amazon board of directors figuring out how they were going to smear him. They were going to call him unintelligent and inarticulate. And one of the high execs quit over how they were going to try to do him. But there was a black guy. And see, again, it's that, and notice, you don't hear about that either. This one black guy was leading this whole strike against Amazon. And they caught Amazon, the top executives, saying how they were going to make him look inarticulate and unintelligent. But when you spoke to him, he was very articulate and very knowledgeable. But they were just going to smear him, but they had to stop the idea, because it's power in that. It's power, and especially now, more so than anything, because people are like, these people really want us to go back to work and endanger ourselves. Meanwhile, they're sitting comfortably and protected. You know, they're not going to have to worry about the health issues. They're going to go on their yachts. They're going to go to their gated communities or fly out to the Hamptons, where they're going to be isolated with doctors on call for them. But they're telling you that you have to go to work. For what? For an Amazon package to be delivered that we really don't need. So they have to stop the idea. And so what they did, let's go pull the blackest folks we can pull. Let's go pull Michael Jordan, who, you know, Jordan, he had opportunities in the 90s to really speak out on some stuff, and he didn't back some people up either. And then let's go get Obama. Now, we ain't heard them say nothing else about any of the other issues that's happening with black people, but y'all can pull them out to tell these other black basketball players to keep on working. And working for what? What they gonna say? We're gonna start a fund for one or two black folks. No, that's garbage. Our billionaires have enough money to systematically change this country almost overnight, but they don't want to. And also remember too, the changing of power it's always going to be ugly, and it always has to be fought for. It has to be fought for, and that's why they pulled Jordan and Obama out, to stop the idea.
Yeah, I was so excited because LeBron has been doing a lot. I mean, more than I thought he was going to do. But when he stepped out, and then I think there was even a point where I was hearing that he doesn't have as much influence as they think. There's other players like, man, look, I'm ready to go back to work and stuff like that. And I was just wondering, I was like, is that kind of like an internal smear to make him look weaker and basically to get everybody back? I mean, because I don't know. This is just me speculating, but I mean, probably so.
Yeah. They will smear you. You know, I always go back and I use my Michael Jackson example, because they continue to smear Michael even in death. But one of the things that, and if you all don't know about the story of Michael Jackson, he was not a pedophile, and he didn't do the things that, you know, that they always accuse him of doing. Michael Jackson was very wealthy. He was co-owner of Sony Publishing, which is really when they started to smear him. But one of the things that Michael was doing when he actually bought ATV was the name of the company that he bought, publishing house. It wasn't the Beatles. The Beatles catalog was a part of the company that he bought. He bought this entire company. So it just wasn't one catalog that he bought. He bought the whole company with all these hundreds of catalogs. Well, supposedly Michael found out that when he bought the company, he actually attained the rights to a lot of older black musicians. And there's an actual YouTube interview with the wife of the guy he bought the company from. And she says, people think that Michael bought my husband's company because he wanted the Beatles music. She said he wasn't concerned about the Beatles music. She said he never did anything with it. She said, but he was concerned about the black artists that her husband owned. She said, like, her husband owned the rights to Nat King Cole's music, Sly and the Family Stone, Michael was buying that company to get the publishing rights to those Black artists back. And supposedly he was returning their rights to them.
Wow.
And so when Michael did that in 1985, that's almost instantaneous when they started the smear against him. But see, again, these stories, that's why I'm real big on details and I'm real big on communicating how we got here. Because if we don't, people are, it's a thing we should call in journalism, lying by omission. They purposely leave out certain things to make people look guilty or to give you a false opinion of somebody. And so when you start adding these other aspects in about what people like Michael and say Prince and a few other folks did, it all begins to make sense. Now, and let me also stop because I know some people are going to say this. I have my opinions about Michael because I actually went and read the documents, the court documents and all these things surrounding him. So just because I will maintain that Michael is innocent doesn't mean that I think that R. Kelly didn't do what I think he did. So just because I can support one without supporting the other, because, you know, again, there's that bully mentality. Oh, well, you think that? No, you know, no, not at all. But go back and read the stuff on these people. Stop allowing this system to tell you about folks. You know, because me, John, we're Black men. We spend our lives hearing about how Black men are. What we found, it's not true. When I went to high school, I was bused to Overton for high school. I had never been to school with white children before I went to high school. Up until that point, the only thing I heard was that Black girls get pregnant young. And Black girls were the only ones that got pregnant young. My first day at Overton, and I can tell you, it was August the 27th, 1992. That's just how well I remember it. And I had a cross-colored outfit. Spanish, Senior Johnson, period 1. Sat down, sat right behind a pregnant white girl. And I stared at her for like the first week because in my mind, because of what we saw and what had been socialized to us was that only Black girls got pregnant as teenagers. So to see this direct contradiction to what I had been told, it was shocking because in our minds, white kids were perfect. They didn't do anything wrong. We were just bad. We were just, we just fight it. We were just bad. But to see this, and it wasn't the only one, and it was just the first of many things that I had been conditioned to believe that I had to realize was false. And see, that's what they do in this. You know, these narratives and all these kind of things that we just repeat and we don't question. You know, we just repeat and don't question about ourselves and about everybody else. Oh, let's just vote. If we just vote for the right person, everything is going to be all right overnight. That's a lie. That's a lie. And they keep saying the lie, even now, if we just get them in there, no. Because if you look at history, it was always a fight. It always has to be a fight. And one of the reasons why we have a Donald Trump, one of the reasons why we have a collapsed economy, we have very few workers' rights, is because the only thing we have been doing is voting. And we have not been in the streets challenging this stuff. And what they've done is they've just done it a little bit over time. You know, we're going to take a little bit. And then they come back the next year and they take a little bit more. And they take. Now, look at us. Look at us. Pandemic. And I knew the pandemic was going to be bad because of how we did HIV/AIDS during the early 1980s. It's a direct correlation. It repeats itself because we are encouraged not to think. We're encouraged not to listen. And then when a new idea does come forth to where we can do something, they send some Obamas out. They send some Jordans out to stop that idea because that idea is contagious. If I'm down here in Memphis and I'm thinking that I'm by myself in my thinking, and you're out there in California, you think you're the only one that's thinking, then that's silos. We're isolated. But when we start listening to each other, okay, well, what he's doing up there is getting some traction. So let's try this down here and see if that works. And then somebody's watching the both of us. And then the sister over there in East Memphis, she starts doing the same thing. Then you start having movement. We weren't talking about defund the police until this happened, were we? We weren't talking anything about this. Look at how the persistence with Breonna Taylor. Look at what we found out. Mm-hmm. Gentrification in that. There's corruption, the attorney general's corruption. I mean, just everything. Years, Black people have been saying how these police departments manipulate and change, and never ever have I seen a jury member file a lawsuit to say this is not what this man told us. He did not even give us the option of convicting or indicting these police officers. You have never heard of a grand jury member filing a lawsuit to say this is not, and then everything that they said was true. He didn't even put it on the table for them to indict those police officers. So their persistence, you know, they're looking at each other and saying, you know what, I'm coming down, or I'm gonna protest it here and I'm gonna protest it there. Look what all that is uncovered. Everything that we've said, from even with George Floyd, you know, just all of the, and see, again, they don't like those ideas. Oh, stop those ideas, stop it, because they're contagious. And that's when you start seeing real revolution and real transformation. But they don't want that transformation. They want you to suffer. And then they're going to come out. And I love Chris Hedges. He said they come out and they speak in that I feel your pain language. No, you don't. They speak in it, but they do nothing about it. They don't fight for it. One of the things when Obama came into office, the Democrats controlled every branch of government. And all you heard from the Democratic Party was bipartisanship. Oh, we got to get some Republicans to support it. These Republicans been ramming through stuff without any Democratic support. Am I you getting ready to put they're trying to push now to get a whole nother Supreme Court nominee. What happened to the bipartisanship? It's all a lie. It's all a front, because the Democrats didn't want to do the work then. But because they didn't want to do the work, look how much worse that has gotten. But see, again, they want to play these games. And that's why it's so important to stop ideas. That's why they had to come in and stop the NBA players from striking, because that sent a bold message. Richard Wolff is one of the economists that I love listening to. And he said how that one decision was powerful, because you would have shut down so much, and then workers would have gotten the idea. Because remember, they were already calling for a general strike. That means everybody. Oh, if that works, we can do it and it'll work. And that's what they have to stop. That's what they have to stop right there. And I'm sorry, I just be going on and on. So
no, man, that was great. What was the guy's name you said that said that again?
Richard Wolff.
Richard Wolff. Okay.
Yeah, he's a Harvard economist. He's been teaching economics for about 40 years. I love Richard Wolff. He's baseline to the point. But just look up. He's written several books. He says now he gets more invitations to actually come and speak after the crash of 2008. He said, like, I've been saying the same thing for 40 years about how this economy and this system is unstable. But he said, like, now that we've had 3 crashes in the last 20 years, and he said, now everybody wants to talk to me. And you even think about that. Like, we've had 20 economic collapses in the first 20 years of this century. We only had one. We had the collapse of 1929, and we didn't have another collapse like that until really the 1980s. So you see how it's coming, the frequency is increasing. And even the crashes of the 1980s were not this bad. Like, I remember 1987 Black Monday. It was nowhere near this. It was nothing like this. And then, the other stuff that came, it was, the 2000.com crash was nothing like this. But 2008 completely collapses. Then we have this it's getting worse and worse, and we're not bouncing back. Rich people are recovering. We're not recovering. And what we have done is that we have just gotten used to doing more and getting less. But see, you can't allow them to do that, because they're going to continue to take. Because they're greedy. They're going to continue to take.
I guess, for everyone who's watching, again, please make sure that you're liking, subscribe to flynubianking.com. I have one last question for you, and then I guess we can wrap it. I know you got some stuff to do, and I think I got to run in a little bit myself. But when you mentioned Michael Jackson, what are your thoughts on Bill Cosby, for instance?
Now, Bill Cosby's case, I haven't really looked into.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know that much about it, so I really don't like to comment on it. Now, Bill Cosby, outside of that, you know, he had said and done some things that were kind of anti-black, you know, a few years ago. But again, I don't know about his cases. I've never really gotten into his cases. I haven't had a chance to. Michael's case is something that I've just been following, you know, or, you know, just like a period of maybe about 10 years. And then when I got access to those court documents, I was like, whoa. But even with Bill Cosby, and let me make this clear, Bill Cosby did put a bid in 1997 to buy NBC because NBC was up for sale. And it was just, even with that, it was weird because there was another attempt to buy Disney by a husband and son cable company out in California named Adelphia. And I always thought it was funny how this father and son company put in a bid to buy Disney, and Disney kind of laughed it off like, no, we can't be owned by regular folk. We got to get bought out by some other folks, you know, by some other rich people. You know, just look that up. I don't know if you'll be able to find anything on that now, but it just kind of stuck with me all these years. But Bill Cosby, I've never really gotten into his case. But I heard that there's some shenanigans that went on with that too. But I think a lot of the court documents are public records. So, you know, let's just kind of take a look, you know, just take a look at it.
Yeah, because I did hear the same thing about, again, this is just hearsay. I'm not really sure, but because I don't want to speak too much on it. But I heard that with him going to jail recently, it was because of him wanting to, I guess, buy NBC again, or I believe, and they potentially wanted to shut that down. So these cases, you know, reemerged again. But again, like, I don't know. Only thing I do know that I can say about Bill Cosby, that I'm still forever grateful for what he has put up. I mean, because of the stuff that we were seeing on TV at the time. Like I said, again, I don't know if he's done this stuff. If he didn't, I don't know. But all I can say is that he has influenced a lot of Black people positively, and has shown us in a very positive light, like the Cosby Show, the Huxtables. You have a doctor for a dad and a lawyer for a mom. Like, you haven't seen anything like that before. And
and he was very adamant about how that show was structured too. They said, like, from everything from the artwork on the walls, because all of the artwork and stuff was done by Black people too. He was very adamant about how everything in that show was portrayed. And you know, I remember, like, when it premiered, like, I was 7 years old, showing how old I am. I've already told y'all how old I am, though. But I remember how that was such a big deal at the time. And not even just because of him being, you know, the portrayal, but we go back to Good Times, and there had, you know, that portrayal of that Black family. They had to, you know, Esther Rolle demanded that the Black father be included with Good Times because they wanted to leave the Black father out of that. So it was, you know, just even all of those shows were beneficial to us. But Bill Cosby kind of rode on the shoulders of Good Times and came out with the Cosby Show just right at the right time. And the impact that it had, you know, was just phenomenal. You know, then A Different World came out, and honestly, Different World kind of did make me want to go to college. It really did. Because you saw all of this Blackness in one space, and Blackness that was proud to be Black, and Black that was not, oh, well, let's just put our heads down and try to, no, it was Black, you know, it was strong, you know, wasn't it? And it's important that we have all portrayals of Black life, you know, but that image, it was powerful, you know, he did, it really was. And like I said, I haven't had a chance to do a deep dive into. Now, we know Bill Cosby, you know, did kind of, you know, he was around, you know, but at the same time, who wasn't out there? Now, if he did the things that he said, that they said he did, then, you know, I still kind of like, maybe he shouldn't be in jail. Maybe he should be on house arrest, you know, but I haven't had the chance to really do that deep dive into what Bill Cosby, you know, what he was accused of.
Yeah, it's the same. I was just I saw an interview with him, and not David Letterman. It was Larry King. I think it was Larry, like an old interview with him and Larry King. Yeah. And it was I remember people were posting up around that time, and I guess he was talking about using the Quaaludes or whatever, dropping it in there.
But that's crazy. That's what they did though. In the 70s, they would take Quaaludes before they had sex.
And the crazy thing that I saw that nobody really paid attention to, because I saw, of course, when he was, like Spanish Butterfly and Bill Cosby, just like, they didn't look good, of course. But the thing that really stood out to me is like, before he even finished his sentence, like Larry King was just like, the Spanish Butterfly. And I was just like, wait, why are you smiling? I'm like, so we're going to ignore that he smiled, so he knows about this culture, and that's cool. But
like the crazy thing is, if you look at, say, drug culture, like go back and look up, I think that's Studio 51, or Studio 54 in New York. That was one of all the stars went to it. And one of the biggest things you did at a club was you did cocaine, you did drugs, you did Quaaludes. And then it wasn't really until the 1980s with Reagan really elevating the war on drugs that drugs, quote unquote, became a bad thing. And even in their criminalization of drugs, they only really criminalized drugs that were really associated with Black and brown folks. So for instance, crack cocaine, and I lived through the crack cocaine epidemic. That was nothing but cocaine in rock form. But you got more time for doing what? Crack than you did for cocaine. Chemically, same drug, but you got more time for crack than you did for cocaine. But during the 1970s, that was the thing to do. Look at what's the guy that played Batman? I mean, the guy that played I can't think of Jack Nicholson. He'll tell you straight up what all he was doing and probably still doing. I mean, but like I don't know the details of not R. Kelly, because R. Kelly is a whole different thing. But Bill Cosby, I don't know the ins and outs of that. So I'm gonna sit down and go over it one day though. What's going on with that, but
thank you again.
But the thing is, we do have to be careful though, because sometimes they will smear people, and they will get us to openly hate folks because this person or persons are doing things that they don't like. One of the things that I always love and attest to, how, for instance, LeBron or any other star, they love telling them to, they love making us or pushing us to be invested in their lives. What they're wearing, who they're dating, what they're eating, what they're driving, where they're living. We're encouraged to be obsessed with them until they start telling us to kind of think for ourselves. And then as soon as they tell us to think and start doing this stuff, it's shut up and sing or shut up and dribble. But you just told us you use these people to you use these people in commercials to get us to spend money. You inundate us with images of what they're doing and all this kind of stuff to get us to buy stuff. But when they tell us to think, they should just shut up and dribble, or just shut up and sing, or just shut up and just shut up. No, you don't get to decide that. You don't get to decide that.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of circles all the way back around with, you have all these entertainers, as Malcolm X has said, you bring the clown, to come speak for the jester, to come speak for this entire community. But what about the scholars? What about the scientists? What about the lawyers? Like all of the people who study this stuff, Black prominent people, but you don't talk to them. You don't talk to those who critically ask questions and think. Yeah,
like like when Trump did the same thing. Who did he call? You're calling Steve Harvey, to talk about prison reform. Why don't you call Michelle Alexander? Why didn't you call Carol Anderson that can tell you about history? Gerald Horn. Why don't you call these people? But again, that's this whole 50 years of moving away from critical thought to this foolishness that we have now. I mean, even Muhammad Ali, when they spoke to him, he could still speak from a place of knowledge because he took the time to actually read and understand what was going on with him. But see, now we've just moved to a place of absolute foolishness. And the crazy thing is that, like, I can understand why people don't trust much of the stuff they see, and you shouldn't trust. Because with this great well of knowledge, there's also a great wealth of misinformation that's purposely dumped out there, that's purposely sent out there to really, really confuse people. And that's why I always encourage people to study the history of it. You know, if you hear something, take a moment to look it up, you know, deep dive on stuff, you know, because nothing in this country is just a 1-2 step. It's not just, it's never just, if we just do this, it's going to be all right. No, there are histories, there are people, you know, there are things involved in this, and you need to study as many aspects of that as you can, because this place, this country, it loves to misinform. My boy Gore Vidal said, and even Noam Chomsky says, we're some of the most misinformed people in the world. Noam Chomsky said, we're constantly lied to. So when somebody hits us with truth, we don't know what to do about it. You know, when it's unadulterated, you know, just hard-hitting truth, we don't know what to do, because we're so used to being bullshitted just every day, you know, from the news, you know, to just everyday life. It's just so much garbage that's thrown at us. And so we don't know how to react to stuff. We don't even know what's truth, you know, what's true and what's just fake anymore. Trump came into office screaming about fake news. The crazy thing about it was he was right on that. There is a lot of fake news. It is. And he's exactly right. But again, that's a lying or partial truth. You know, what is the fake news? Why is it fake? You know, fake news comes from Fox just like it comes from CNN and MSNBC. So, I mean, he was right on that. But we just have to take, and then don't allow this system or people to limit to make you give a response right away. Because we love doing that too. Well, you got to say it right. No, we don't. No, we don't. We can take a moment to examine our sources, to look over and read over stuff. We can take that time to actual study. Don't be bullied into having to give a response or a reactive response without being informed first. That's all part of this. That's all part of what the system has done to us.
Yeah. Thank you, Frank. I really appreciate it, man. You taking your time out to talk, you know, and talk about these issues and really inform us, like, on a historical front, like how we've even gotten to this point, and even like what's going on today and how we can move forward, how we should move forward by asking those tough questions and keeping on even our candidate. And again, like he said, like I'm saying, neither of us are telling you how to vote. Neither of us are telling you who to vote for. That's your choice. That's your privilege to do with it whatever you wish. Just only thing that I guess both of us can ask is that you just stay informed. Please stay informed. Learn as much as you can. The information is out there. Look it up, read. I know there's only so much time in the day, but I try to do as much as I can without being too overwhelmed. But, you know, at least try to make the effort to be better informed voters going forward.
Well, you know, we have all kinds of methods now. So when you're talking about like a Noam Chomsky, you know, you can YouTube him. And as you're moving about your day, just put it on YouTube and just listen to his lectures. Listen to Howard Zinn, People's History of the United States. He has a lot of YouTube videos where he's just going over and giving, you know, lectures and speeches about this stuff. I mean, I found Baldwin through YouTube. And I mean, and I know, and we should always read. We should read as much as we can. But, you know, we get so busy. But Google these people. They got lectures online. Gore Vidal, Gerald Horne, another wonderful Black historian. And he breaks stuff. He can break down the actual causes of the War of Independence. You know, he will even tell you how they were just mad because Great Britain was telling them not to go over in Indian territory. You know, Gerald Horne can break this stuff down, and you're just like, wow. And one of the things that Gerald Horne said is the reason why you're hearing about these details and this information now is because we are now going into the archives and pulling out this information. And so, like, for a time, we were not allowed to. You know, we were not allowed to go into these research facilities and where they keep the documents and all that kind of stuff. But now we are. And so you got a Carol Anderson, a Gerald Horne, a Eddie Glaude. These people are pulling this information and they're writing books. They're making YouTube videos and they are telling the truth. That's why I crack up when I hear people talk about, like, for instance, Kanye West. Well, Kanye West trying to give us information and, you know, he can't tell us all the information. He can only tell us a little bit encoded. I said, well, I don't like encoded information when we got whole Black folks telling you the straight up truth. So why am I going to go get filtered information when we got black folks giving straight up, and not just black folk, but, you know, white people giving straight up full truths and telling you where to go find it. I don't need him to give me pieces of little truth, you know, little truths that he just came off his head. You got full truth right here. People boldly telling you the truth, you know, right in your face. And just so, again, we're so celebrity obsessed, you know, and it's like, oh, well, he said, no. Gerald Horn, them, go listen to these historians, the people that have taken the time and still continue to take the time to sit down with this information, ingest it and process it. And they're going to tell you, you know what, you don't believe me? Go read this. Go look at this. Go look at that. Anybody that's really concerned about you learning is not going to just have you coming back to them. They're going to tell you where to go find it yourself. They're going to tell you, you go here. If you can't sit down and read this book, then listen to, what's the name on YouTube? Listen to Malcolm X on YouTube. Listen to Fannie Lou Hamer on YouTube. They're there. The information is there. Even when you watch these documentaries, listen to these points and these events that happen and go Google them. You know, I got a 4th grade student of mine when I was teaching, interested in the Black Panthers, because I showed them the documentary 13th, and my girls got so enthused of watching Angela Davis talk. And one of my 4th graders, she came back from that weekend. We did not get along until this. She came back that weekend with a whole essay written about the Black Panther movement, about Angela Davis. And from then on, we had a great relationship because I piqued her interest by just showing her this, giving her access. And they loved it because they had never seen that. They had never seen a Black woman like Angela Davis speaking, you know, with so much knowledge and information and then so much power. So expose ourselves and expose each other to this stuff. And it leads to other things, and it should, because that's what education is.
Yeah. Again, thank you, man. Thank you so much. Everybody that is tuned in and listen to this, please give Frank a digital round of applause for coming in on this show. Make sure you're hitting the like button, share this so that other people can see this, because this information needs to get out. Thank you so much. Make sure you guys are subscribing to Fly Nubian King. Also, there's Fly Nubian Queen. We have some other great speakers and people on there that you can listen to and find out more information. This is the place for intelligent Black people and just intelligent thought. You know, we want to think and speak and, you know, critically. You know, this isn't for baby talk and all this stuff. So we're trying to really push something forward. So thank you again, Frank, for coming on the JT Effect, man. I know. Hopefully, are you interested in coming back? If you know.
I mean, yeah.
All right, cool, man. I'm definitely glad to have you, man. I'm so glad. I want to say for everybody, you know, like, please stay tuned. We're gonna bring Frank back, and I hope all of you all have a great rest of the day. I'm gonna let him go so that way that he can do what he needs to do, and I got some stuff I need to take care of. But thanks, man. I love you all. Y'all have a great day.